This is a Toyota Blade Master with the 3.5 litre V6. I recently had someone asking me what they could delete from their air intake. They'd got rid of the filter box and put a pod filter on there, but they had all this extra stuff on, which you can see here has the red hose. They didn't know what it was, so they'd done the right thing and kept it, but obviously it looked pretty untidy. So what is all this stuff? So you can see here we have a check valve. Down there is a solenoid valve, a vacuum reservoir, and what you can't see down here is there's a little flap actuator. So what is this and what's it all for? So here's one that's outside of the car, and here you can see the actuator and the flap that's inside the bottom of the filter box here. So what this is all for is that when you're at high RPM and you've got your foot up it, it opens this flap and allows extra air into the filter body. And when you're not at high RPM and high throttle, it closes the flap to reduce noise. That's all this is about. It's about getting extra air into the filter when you're at high RPM and keeping the noise down when you're at low RPM. And this is all done through vacuum. So quite simply, when vacuum's applied to this actuator, it opens. When vacuum's released, it closes. And that's what this whole system is for. So the parts that make it up, this is where your engine intake manifold is connected, because your intake manifold normally has quite high vacuum in it. So this allows vacuum to pass through this hose to the reservoir at the back here. You need a check valve in there because remember this system's used when you've got high throttle position. When you're at high throttle position is when you don't have vacuum in your intake manifold. So that's why you need this reservoir here to store some vacuum and the check valve to make sure you don't lose it. And then obviously you've got the solenoid valve here. This is what's controlled by your ECU, turns the vacuum on and off. When it turns the vacuum on to this flap, that's when it opens. And when it turns off, it releases the vacuum through this filter. This is actually an air filter right here. So if you get rid of this air box completely, or if you at least take the top off it, this whole system becomes rather redundant and you may want to delete it to clean things up. It's actually very simple to do. The number one thing you've got to do is to make sure you block this hose coming off your intake manifold. This can be done simply by turning this check valve around, but better yet would be to block it off properly on the manifold with a nice piece of blank. Once you've done that, the other thing that you can do is you can take the solenoid valve out, but if you do just disconnect it, you will get lots and lots of warning lights on your dashboard. So to get around that, you can just put a 1500 ohm resistor into the pins of this terminal, tape it all up with insulation tape so it doesn't actually short out, and that will get rid of it for you. You can get rid of all of the hosing, the solenoid valve, the vacuum reservoir, the actuator, and all of that stuff if you wish. Okay, cheers.